Those in favor? Motion carried. Getting a motion that the minutes of the November 1st, 2022 regular meeting of council be adopted as presented. Councillor Bevan will make that motion. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carried. We have a public hearing tonight on the Edson West Area Structure Plan amending bylaw number 2282. So we will ask our planner, Shaival Gajar, to take a seat up front here. I just want to remind everybody about the process tonight. It's an opportunity for the public to state their opinion, whether they're for or against this amending bylaw, as well as to ask any questions. We will have a staff presentation followed by the public presentation from anyone wishing to speak for or against this bylaw, followed by clarifying questions for town council. I must remind everyone this is not a place to engage in debate, but rather gather information. If applicable, the applicant will be given an opportunity to speak, 15-minute time limit. Council may ask clarifying questions. Other registered speakers will have a 5-minute time limit to speak unless I extend the allotted time. And please direct all questions through the chair. Everyone will be given a reasonable opportunity to be heard here this evening. And we will hand things over to our planner to present to us on amending bylaw number 2282.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening. Today I will be presenting about the amendment to the bylaw 2251.
Just want to expand
2282, correct? 228.
Sorry, 2282. My bad.
I just want to expand this one there, and we'll allow you to share screen.
Right. So my apologies. I will be talking about bylaw 2282, which is an amending bylaw to bylaw 2251. Before I start, I would like to highlight that in my previous presentation for this amendment's first reading, I had mentioned that we are amending bylaw 2118. However, it is bylaw 2251 that we are amending, and I apologize for that mistake. Edson West ASP is a regional document jointly created by the town and Yellowhead County. It was adopted in 2013 and provides a framework for future redistricting, subdivision, and development of lands located along Highway 16 in the west portion of the town and in Yellowhead County. This is a map showing plan area for Edson West ASP. Since this is a regional document, a portion of it is within the jurisdiction of the town and remaining falls in the Yellowhead County. The reason for this amendment is that Yellowhead County adopted the new land use bylaw in September 2021, which introduced redefined land use districts. The existing Edson West ASP document references land use districts that were found in the previous land use bylaw. So the proposed amendments are to update Edson West ASP document to be consistent with the new land use bylaw of Yellowhead County. The proposed amendments are more like housekeeping edits and does not change the intent or policy framework of the Edson West ASP document. The Council of Yellowhead County passed a similar amending bylaw on October 25th, 2022. In Edson West ASP document, there are some land use districts that are referenced from Yellowhead County's old land use bylaw, which will be renamed or redefined as per the new land use bylaw. And this is an example of how Yellowhead County's old land use bylaw referenced some districts and how their new land use bylaw references the districts. On the right hand side is the new land use bylaw districts. For example, in section 22.1 of the document, highway commercial will be changed to commercial district, and rural industrial will be changed to industrial district. Similarly, in the second snippet, it mentions that environmental preservation district, which will be changed to protection district, because they changed the names and the intent, the definition of the purpose of the districts. We have to make those changes in our document as well. This slide shows the old map and the amended new map. The map on the right has some blue boxes that highlight the areas that saw changes in the zoning in Yellowhead County. Notification for tonight's public hearing included letters to the landowners in the plan area, advertisement in the Weekly Anchor newspaper on November 7th and November 14th, advertisement on the town's official website and social media, and this was done in accordance with advertising bylaw 2233. No submissions were received in advance of tonight's public hearing. Administration recommends that council give second and third reading to bylaw number 2282. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Shival, for the presentation here this evening. And we will open the floor now to any questions or comments from anybody from the floor. So if you want to step forward, just state your name, where you're from, and whether you're for or against this bylaw.
Hello, my name is, good evening, council. My name is Jack Edson, and I'm not opposed to this bylaw at all. I live in the town of Edson, and I purchased a piece of property in this area. And I was unfamiliar with what the Edson West area structure plan was. I don't know, I don't read enough of the newspaper or what, it just never came across my plate. But anyways, through this letter that was mailed out, I was intrigued to follow it up, and I was wondering if I got a two-part question. What exactly is it, and what is the timeline? It directly impacts the property that we want.
Okay, thank you for that. I don't know, administration, are you prepared to answer that question this evening?
So, sure, through you, Mr. Mayor. So just to clarify, so the intent of the area structure plan is the first question,
Yeah, well, exactly.
or the amendments themselves, or just the area structure?
Just the area.
Okay. So area structure plans are sort of midterm planning documents municipality use. In this case, it's a joint area structure plan between Yellowhead County and the town of Edson. And typically they'll lie between a MDP, which is your long-term development plan, and then an ASP is sort of I would say a 10-year plan that guides land use decisions in the plan area through policy direction, right? We won't get into too many specifics. This one's a little more specific than some, but generally it's guiding your land use decisions that will eventually see what develops in that area. So if it's identified for future industrial development, that's the land uses that we would pursue, or you'd look for landlords to pursue in that particular area. And there's guiding policies on how you would do that. But typically there'll be other plans and amendments done before, like land use bylaw amendments, for example, before you see development there.
Okay, so may I speak?
Yeah, go ahead.
Land use bylaw amendments, so they will, the bylaws will change. Does that mean what you can do with your property will change?
Right. So for example, through you, Mr. Mayor. So for example, so you own a piece of land in the plan area. So I'm not sure where it is, but let's say it's identified in the area structure plan for future commercial development. So when you're ready to develop that land, whether you need to subdivide it or what you may ever need to do, if you come with your idea of what you want to do as a commercial, maybe a commercial development, and you would make application to either subdivide or develop that piece of land that's consistent with the ASP. So the ASP we used to guide us, the decision making, to make sure it's consistent with the policy direction within that area structure plan.
Okay. So what I would recommend, Mr. Dixon, you're a town of Edson resident, correct?
That's correct.
Maybe we can get some contact information from you, and our planning department can follow up with you and maybe answer any questions you may have, which might be specific to your property.
By all means, yeah, we'd be happy to.
May I ask one more question?
Yeah, for sure. Go ahead.
Is there any chance that rezoning may happen at the time that they execute on this, or is it more when you try to do your own property changes?
So the town itself doesn't have any plans to develop or make any land use decisions that land. Basically, it's the landowners would come forward with those decisions at the time they're ready to develop it. So this is basically as presented housekeeping amendments on behalf of the work that Yellowhead County did. So the town of Edson itself has no specific changes or any imminent action in that area at this point in time.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Council, for your time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dixon, for taking the time this evening. Maybe we can get your contact information. Somebody in planning can follow up with you.
I will do that.
Okay, thank you. Do we have anybody else here this evening that would like to speak for or against the bylaw? I believe we may have some folks online.
Mr. Mayor, we do have one member of the public, but I believe they indicated in their registration form that they had no intention to speak during the public hearing, but certainly Mr. Wells, if you would be interested, you can use the raise hand or the chat feature to indicate that.
Okay, so Mr. Wells, if you are listening online, if you do want to speak, please use the raise hand function or just type into the chat box and we can certainly look at that. And we had no written submissions for this amending bylaw. Okay, we'll give it a few more minutes. And I'll ask the question one more time. Anybody else would like to speak for or against this bylaw? Seeing none, I will then close the public hearing. Thank you. We will move on to delegations. The Edson Youth Council, Tina Insko, our Community Development Coordinator with the town of Edson, is with us this evening, and we do have members of Youth Council here. Deanna, where are you? You want to stand?
I'm actually standing.
Is there anything you want to say before I get them to introduce themselves?
Yeah, I'm just really proud of this group this year. They are they've got lots of initiative and gumption, and they're really kind and great to work with. So I'll let them introduce themselves.
All right, sounds good. So we'll go one by one. If you want to stand up, introduce yourself, identify whether or not this is your first, second, third, fourth term on Youth Council and what school you're from, and tell us why you decided to join Youth Council.
My name's Andrew Vandergay. I'm 16 years old and this is my 4th term on Youth Council. I go to Parkland and I really enjoyed the Youth Council in the past years, and I joined it just kind of like check it out, see what it was. And I kind of like really caught on. I think it was great, all the action you can do and stuff.
Excellent, thank you.
My name is Sadie Whitford. I'm 60. I go to HRH. This is my first term. I just want to promote change around town and support Indigenous issues.
Excellent.
My name is Dylan Florida. This is my 3rd term on the Youth Council. I'm 16 years old. I go to Parkland Comstock High School, and I just really like all the change that the Youth Council has done for the town and what we could possibly do for the future.
All right, thank you.
My name is Maya Dalek. I am in grade 9 at Holy Redeemer. This is my first year on Youth Council, and I joined it because it seemed like a good platform where I can put my ideas out and the ideas from my peers.
My name is Kieran Bradbury. I'm 17 years old. I go to Parkland Composite High School, and this is my 5th year on Youth Council. I joined it to get an insight into municipal government at first, and now I stay with it because I'm really enjoying the engagement and the involvement in the community I get to have for Youth Council.
My name is Brader Noishi. I'm in grade 12, French immersion at Parkland Composite High School. This is my 5th year on Youth Council. I initially joined to find out more about the town, and I stayed because like all the volunteering events were extremely interesting. Yeah.
Right. My name is Noah Alley. I'm in grade 12. This is my 4th year, and I joined the council to learn about the experiences and like see all the new things of what's going on in the town of Edson. And yeah, that's it.
I'm Daniel Palisok. I'm 15. I go to Parkland, and this is my 3rd year. I joined kind of just to see how it's like in town government, and I stayed for the community involvement and the volunteer opportunity.
Stand up one more time. I'm going to represent Monica Glasser. She's not here this evening, but she goes to HRH and this will be her 2nd year on.
I'm Emmy Pilardo. I'm in grade 10. I go to Parkland. This is my 2nd year on Youth Council, and I joined because the town is interesting and I really enjoyed it.
My name is Olivia Hemsley. I am 14 years old. This is my 2nd term on Youth Council, and I joined because I find community like service and volunteering really important, and I love helping other people. So My name is Kinsey. This is my second term on youth council. I'm in Parkland in grade 9, and I wanted to play a bigger role in my community.
Excellent. So thank you so much for taking the time to be here this evening. This is our 5th youth council. And it's been a really interesting experience so far. Councillor Moore just wrapped up his first term on it. Councillor Byer has been on it, and now we have Councillors Taylor and Pasichny. You haven't been able to enjoy a meeting yet, but we have a lot of things on the plate and projects that we're going to be working on. So if you like youth council, you can stay for the entire meeting tonight. We actually have a very interesting meeting because we are going to be discussing budget. But if you want to leave or you have other commitments, you certainly can do that. We are going to take a brief recess just to do a photo with youth council and town council is what we normally do each year, and then return to our meeting. So we'll resume our meeting at about 7:25. All right, we will return to our session, and before we wrapped up the delegation, I forgot to do something. We need to introduce ourselves.
Yeah.
So let's go around the table. If you want to start with CO Beverage.
Hello, I'm Christine Beveridge. I'm the town CAO. I have been with the town for a year and 6 months.
And what got you interested in the municipal world, and how long have you been a municipal administrator?
Oh, gosh. Okay. Honestly, my grandfather was a county councillor. So throughout my whole life, it was always a part of our life as far as the politics around the supper table. And when it comes to, and then I went into municipal government, and so that's been my life for the last 22 years, and I've been a CAO for the last 4.5.
Great, thank you. Councillor Moore.
I'm Ed Moore, and you may know me over the years. I was a journalist with the Edson Leader for quite a few years, and now I'm first time councillor going into my 2nd term, and enjoy it immensely. Lots of learning, but you know, I've always been willing to learn, and yeah, lots of interesting experiences for sure.
Council Moore, 2nd year, not term.
Oh,
Your 2nd year.
Second year, okay.
Yeah. Councillor Chenard, 4th term. Listening to you youth councillors, I got into council for somewhat of the same reason, was very interested in town, wanted to give something back. So 4th term, I'm known as the quiet shy councillor, so I'm interested in politics. Go ahead, talk them up.
Yeah, Councillor, my name's Greg Pasichny. It's my 5th term on council, 1st term as a councillor. I was interested in politics when I was probably your age. My parents thought I was a bit weird for watching Question Period, but I always found it interesting. My aunt served in the provincial government as a cabinet minister in the Klein government, so I had a taste of government through her, and then I got mad at our planning department and decided I should run for office at the age of 29. So at that time, I chose to go for the mayor's chair because it seemed logical at the time. And I was successful and then for several terms, and then took a nice break. And now I'm back on council and having a lot more fun as a councillor than as I was as a mayor. So yeah, that's my brief history.
You don't miss all the power?
No.
Mayor Kevin Zara, I think you all know me. I've been involved in municipal politics 10 years, 12 years. This is my 2nd term as mayor. I served on 2 terms as a councillor here in Edson prior to that, and for a few years on Athabasca Town Council, first elected when I was 19 years of age with my middle school principal at the time. I won in a by-election. Yeah, it's been a fun time. Good.
Councillor Peter Taylor, I'm a 1st term councillor. Been interested in politics for a very long time. Was involved in lots of different campaigns and even ran a few campaigns, some of the people sitting at this table, in fact. But I decided I wanted to get involved myself and put my sort of ideas forward in this term. And yeah, as I know, I get to sit on youth council with you guys. It's one of the highlights.
Trevor Bevan, going into my 3rd term here. I was involved with the town of Edson on different boards, probably for about 9 years, FCSS, AA and stuff. I wanted to run earlier, but my previous job wouldn't let me. I belonged in the oil field and I could only maybe make one meeting a month. But when I retired 13, 14 years ago, I did sit where you guys were sitting for almost 3 years and listen to council and find out what they were about and seeing if I would like it. I've always had an interest in the town and I still do. I sit on a few boards here. I really enjoy it. Council has been very great. We get to talk to a lot of politicians, everything else, and I applaud you people for showing up and wanting to learn about the town and have interest in us. I think that's great. So kudos to you guys. Thank you.
I'm Crystal Byer. This is my second term, 5th year on council, and I became interested in politics and how governments make decisions in high school. And always paid attention after that. And when I served on the youth council, it was really fantastic meeting you guys, and definitely proud of all of those that have been on there for 3, 4, and 5 years. So that's really fantastic, and I'm excited to see where your futures go. So thank you.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us tonight. My name is Clayton Kitless. I'm General Manager of Infrastructure and Planning here at the town of Edson. I've been here just over a year. Unlike Ms. Beveridge, my grandfather was a carpenter, so I've absolutely no idea why I am in the municipal government. But what I can tell you is I've been doing it for about 27 or 28 years in municipalities across Alberta, BC, and it's a great career. It is never boring. So.
My name is Bob Beck. I'm the General Manager of Community Protective Services. I've been here a little over a year. And I too have had a long career in municipal government, just like Clayton. I've got a beat by a few years. And it's been a very rewarding career. You can do lots of things. So if you're thinking about taking that path, I highly encourage it. Public service is it's a great way of life. So thanks for your commitment to the Action Council.
Daniel?
My name is Daniel Lucas. I'm the legislative officer of the town of Edson. Became interested in politics and local government because I'm just generally interested in ethics and moral philosophy, and politics being a way to action one's moral philosophy in a collective capacity. And I also had the privilege of working as a Alberta Municipal Affairs municipal intern for the town of Edson for 2 years from 2016 to 2018. And naturally that got me hooked, and I've since returned back and have been in my current role for about a year and a half. Would certainly recommend to any of you that you consider the municipal affairs internship program and just a broader career in local government. There's plenty of opportunity, and it's always enriching and meaningful.
Shival?
Hello, I'm the planner for the town. I got into municipal, this is my second year in the municipal government sector, and I've worked in the private sector before, but things are different working in private sector versus municipal sector. So I thought I should learn more about how municipal sector works. So that got me interested because planning is has a lot to do with government projects. So eventually, yeah.
All right, so thank you once again for coming tonight, and hopefully some of you will be able to stay for the duration of the meeting. And I also want to thank each and every one of you for all the volunteering that you are doing in our community. It's greatly appreciated. So we are going to move on to item F, reading of bylaws. Can I get a motion that council gives second reading to bylaw number 2282? Councillor Taylor will make that motion, and Mr. Kitlitz or Shival, do you want to speak to this? This is in relation to the public hearing earlier this evening.
No, Mr. Chair, I don't have anything else to add.
Okay. Anybody have any questions, comments, or concerns regarding the amending bylaw? Pretty straightforward. So with that, I will call the question. All those in favor? Motion carried. And can I get third reading to bylaw number 2282? Councillor Moore, do you want to make that motion? Thank you. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carried. We're going to move on to draft fees and charges bylaw number 2283. Can I get a motion that council give first reading to bylaw number 2283? And Councillor Byer will make that motion. Unfortunately, Ms. Bittner could not be with us this evening. And I think we're going to hand this over to Mr. Lucas.
That is correct. Mr. Lucas is going to come and get set up. He has prepared this presentation in advance as it was, so we felt it was appropriate that he would present, and we will also supplement any questions that council may have during that presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Pepperidge. As noted, I'm presenting the draft fees and charges bylaw number 2283 with some assistance from the senior leadership here as well. So just a brief overview. This is obviously been presented at committee as of last week, but a brief overview of the goals here with the draft bylaw. Essentially what it does is it would repeal and replace the existing fees, rates and charges bylaw number 2214 as amended by bylaw number 2278. It makes some non-substantive clerical and formatting adjustments. Primary goals here being ensure just readability, professionalism of the style of, in particular, the fee schedule, as well as to better align the language and formatting used in the bylaw text itself with municipal peers. Of course, there are also some substantive adjustments being made, in particular, updates to fees and charges based on a partial review of those fees and charges. A few different principles informing the recommendations here. Depending on the nature of the fee in question, obviously some of these principles will be more relevant than others, but we're looking at things like cost recovery and approaching cost recovery, alignment with municipal peers or alignment with the region, as well as ensuring alignment with the existing regulatory guidelines within town bylaws and logistical feasibility in one case. So a quick overview of the entirety of the fees and charges that are being revised. I'll speak to some and then pass the floor to Mr. Kidlitz. So there's a removal of the shower rental fee at the Edson District Leisure Center. The issue here was just it wasn't a service that was logistically feasible to provide. The addition of a secondary niche plaque fee at the cemetery. We previously had no charge installed for the installation of a second niche plaque with Columbaria. However, of course, the town incurs a cost in acquiring these secondary niche plaques. So the new fee just reflects that to ensure cost recovery. We've also adjusted the tax certificate fee. This was based on an intermunicipal review that found that typically we were quite low. We're recommending an adjustment up to $25, which is slightly lower than the actual average, but we did find the plurality or most municipalities did have that $25 fee, the tax certificates. And with that, I will, and also water and sewer usage rates. We'll be speaking in more depth to these changes, in particular to the water usage rate changes later on in the presentation. But for now, it's just worth noting that these rates are set based on cost recovery for specific budgeted expenses, programs, and transfers that kind of feed into those rates. And with that, I will pass the floor to Mr. Kidlitz.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. So the waste management recycling rate change is it's an obligation based on an agreement we have with the service provider. The agreement calls for a 2% increase each calendar year of that agreement. So that's what's reflected in this amendment is an obligation for that increase. The landfill fees is a proposal by administration to have our tipping fee match that of the regional authority. Currently it's set at $61 and ours is at $50. So we're proposing an increase to match that rate with the rest of the region. Business licenses, I think council's seen this in the presentation by Mr. Nyambira during the business license bylaw. We're proposing increases to the business license fees across the board and a change in how they're managed. Now it's based on some research we did with comparisons from other municipalities. And then finally, the billboard fee, and I'll apologize to council and council positioning specifically, because when he asked this question in committee last week, he didn't answer it very well. So the bylaw change that occurred really didn't impact this fee change. It's more of a recommendation from staff. Administering this renewal every year it's a bit of an administration. It just takes some time and energy, and we weren't finding there was any issues with the billboard sign being installed, like there was a lot of enforcement issues or anything going bad. And so I guess the recommendation was rather than doing the yearly renewal, which was administratively cumbersome, we would provide this opportunity to have a one-time fee and then just be there in perpetuity. We can always enforce if the sign becomes unsightly or it's no longer there or whatever needs to happen with it. But so I think it's just a different approach that we wanted to take with it. So that's what the proposal is. The renewal fee will no longer be applied. It'll just be a one-time fee.
As noted, this item was presented at the November 8th, 2022 Committee of the Whole meeting. The feedback at that meeting largely focused on the utility rates, which were presented in depth at that time. There was a discussion amongst the committee to increase the water rate to align with that for sewer. And this is specifically the variable rate, so the rate per cubic meter of water consumption. So in the revised draft of the bylaw that's presented at council today, we have the increase of that rate to $1.94. For the average user using 20 cubic meters of water per month, this translates into $4.20 per month or $50.40 per year, again, relative to what was brought forward at the Committee of the Whole meeting. And again, that increase from $1.73 to $1.94 would generate a forecasted $191,250 in additional reserve transfers being allocated to the Water Asset Management Plan Reserve for planning and implementation of future water system needs. I won't necessarily dwell on this slide for too long. Council has seen some of this information before, but here we just have a kind of the first graphic shows a breakdown of what makes up utility rates and what makes up the increase between increases that are based on operational cost increases and those that are in accordance with the asset management plan. And then we have percentage increases from 2022 to 2023 on the side. And the bottom graphic simplifies some of this information, aggregates it to show that tallying all of the utility bills. So this includes not only the variable usage rate, but also flat administrative fees, wastewater treatment plant levy, and the stormwater collection $2 stormwater management fee. That yields for the average residential user, again, using these 20 cubic meters per month of consumption, a 2022 charge per month of $117.52, increasing in 2023 with the recommended rates to $136.61. This is a 16% change and an annual increase in costs of $229.08 over, again, aggregating the entirety of that utility bill. Similar figures for non-res, which are displayed there. Most important of which are the 18% increase that this embodies, as well as an annual increase of $230, again, over the entire utility bill. We also have some intermunicipal comparative data that we're bringing back for council's consideration, focusing again on those rates that have changed since the Committee of the Whole meeting, specifically the water rate. I just want to highlight once again the scope and limitations of this comparative analysis that was done. So the scope was there were 12 comparative municipalities reviewed. We're comparing Edson's 2023 proposed rates as outlined in the draft bylaw to our comparators' known 2022 rates. So that in some sense skews the comparison. Presumably other municipalities will also be looking to increase their rates at some point, meaning that we'll compare lower than is suggested relative to our peers. As well, this examines nominal rates only. It's not a detailed service review of what's being provided exactly for these fees. It also doesn't go into the methodology for calculating these rates. So what all is factored in setting these rates. Obviously, there's a wide range of practices across municipalities in terms of scale of cost recovery, which costs are being recovered, et cetera, that would require a more in-depth study to look into. And then there's also obviously in any municipality other variables affecting the cost of living. This is one important measure, but obviously this doesn't factor in things like the taxation level in other municipalities. Finally, just a note, there's a slight difference in the numbers presented in these graphics, and that's because these graphics aggregate water, waste, and sewer. They don't include the stormwater fees, again, because there's a reasonable amount of variation in municipal practice in stormwater levies, and since we're not recommending a change to the stormwater levies, the intermunicipal comparison didn't dive into them as deeply as a future comparison likely would. With all of that said, we see that for water, Edson continues to be meaningfully below the intermunicipal average, which hovers around 60. And as you can see, Edson is around that $45 mark per month, again, assuming 20 cubes per month. But perhaps the more important figure is the combined bill. Again, this includes waste collection fees and recycling. It includes water and sewer as well. And here we see that Edson is very much aligned with the average, I think $1 or $2 above it. So with that context, the recommendation from administration today is that council approve the 4 resolutions proposed, which would cumulatively give 3 readings to bylaw number 2283, which would then take effect on January 1st of 2023. With that, I would open the floor to any questions council may have.
All right, thank you, Mr. Lucas, for your presentation here this evening. We will open the floor to questions. Council, do you have anything that you'd like to ask a question about? I know we had an hour-long discussion last week about this, so I think we're pretty in tune with what's being proposed here. Councillor Byer, are you happy with the changes that are proposed?
Thanks, Dr. the Chair to Council and Administration. Yes, I am pleased with what was recommended by Mr. Lucas there, and I appreciate Council's support as well. Following this passes, I would like to make an additional motion.
All right. Thank you. With that, I will call the question. All those in favor? Motion carried. Can I get a motion that council gives second reading to bylaw number 2283? Councillor Sherrard will make that motion. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carried. Can I get a motion that bylaw number 2283 be placed for third reading? Councillor Pisichny, all those in favor? Motion carried. And can I get a motion that third reading be given to bylaw number 2283? Councillor Bevan, all those in favor? Motion carried. And you had another motion you wanted to put on the floor?
Please, yes, after the chair, to council, I would like to make a motion that council direct administration to explore a full capital cost recovery utility rate model and bring forward a report to council highlighting their findings and potential implementation steps.
All right, thank you. Councillor Byer, would you like to speak to that?
Sure. So thank you through the chair to council. So last week we had a lengthy discussion about the utility rates, and there is a thought that we should perhaps find out how far behind we are in our capital cost recovery, should we choose to get there. This motion is to gather that information so we can see where we're at, and see how far we are away from giving the residents the proper water that we need to be able to give to them, in align with what Mr. Fisher presented about a month ago or so, which to us on those four challenges that we're facing. So this is just to move in that direction and gather more information on that.
All right, thank you, Councillor Byer. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Go ahead, Councillor Pisichny.
Through the mayor to administration, are we not already doing something along those lines?
Sue Beveridge.
Mr. Mayor, through to Councillor Pisichny, not at this time when it comes to our capital review of our capital costs. The operational cost recovery is something that we had in the past. We had already embraced that, and we're moving, and essentially it was just a matter of putting away a set amount with the asset management plan for future infrastructure replacement. But at this time, we do not have an understanding of the utility rate model it would take to restore, to come close to restoring what's the capital infrastructure for the organization.
Good, Councillor, for this question through the chair of administration. My other question would be then, do we have the staff capacity to take on such a challenge? And if we don't, what would a contract and something like that out cost in dollars?
Go ahead, Sue Beveridge.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through to Councillor Pisichny. At this time, that was a question that was contemplated. We need to do some research as far as what is all involved. It definitely will be an external. What we propose is that we would bring back the scope of the project to council, and you would have a good understanding of what the project would take, and then we would provide information as far as what the cost would be, and as also any resources that would be required.
All right, thank you. Councillor Sherrard.
Okay, hearing the information, I do understand the motion through the chair. I do understand the motion, but I'm listening to Councillor Pisichny as well. Before we pass it, we need to know more information, because some of the information we are gathering, but do we need a motion, or we wait for more information before we direct administration to do this? And it's great information, but at what cost?
Beverage.
Mr. Mayor, through to Councillor Sherrard. I think one of the things we've learned over the past few months is that it's important that we do bring back these items to council to make sure that we are hitting the mark when it comes to these projects. And given the timing, also looking at what would be required to explore this, it does take time away that we were not ready to do so, just with the resources that we had at the moment. And so we don't have the information as far as what it would take for a full capital cost recovery utility rate model. And so we would bring that back to a committee meeting, provide council the information as far as what the project looks like, and then you'd be able to move forward. We would still continue. I just think it's just a matter of, we would include that step on this very important project.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments, or concerns? Councillor Taylor.
To the mayor and the council, I was supportive of this when it was brought up last week. We need this knowledge. Now, with knowledge is power. We need this information before we take it to the next step as to how we're going to solve this bigger problem that we have. And right now, just to find out more information about the process of doing it, and the scope, as CEO Beveridge says, I think is important. And I think it's what we need to do. So that's why I'm supporting the motion.
All right. Any other questions, comments, or concerns? Councillor Position.
If I may, maybe through to the mover. So is the intent of this motion to bring back what it's gonna cost or take us to do? Or is this insane, you want this done? Like, I'm trying to.
Councillor Fire.
Through the chair to Councillor Positioning. So this would enable us to gather more information, so we know. Administration then would give us the cost of what that would take. Because right now they don't have those answers on what it would cost to outsource this, and what information we would get by that. So this is allowing them to devote a few resources internally, as I understand, to see what this would be. So this isn't spending money on it at this point.
CEO Beveridge.
Mr. Mayor, through to all of council, I think the key word is explore. And I think that's the first piece, is that we'd like to explore what this would take in order to bring this initiative forward, and have council's understanding of what it would take to explore this project, because this is a full project.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments, or concerns? Councillor Chenard.
So that's exactly where I'm stuck too. I like the idea. So if we pass the motion, it's going towards exploring, and what does that cost and how much time? Because I'm seeing exploring, but I'm also stuck. I like the idea, but I'm just thinking you're going to bring us more information. So to explore, does that burn up valuable time and expenses?
CEO Beveridge.
Mr. Mayor, through to Councillor Chenard, with any project, I think it's important that administration does bring these things forward as far as what it would take in order to take on a project of this magnitude. The reasoning behind not wanting to, one, we weren't able to bring forward all of the information. It just wasn't possible at this moment in time. It was asked, but it was not something we could possibly do. And so being able to bring it back for councils, I suppose that the motion in itself, when we note the exploration of, it does commit, council could determine that the cost is too great in order to go down the path. But it's just going to be a matter of doing some research. We're not going to spend any money. And that's why we didn't recommend any funding for this initial step. It's just spending some time to do some research, in which our finance manager would be the person that would be doing.
All right, thank you. Any other questions, comments, or concerns? Seeing that, I will call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carried 6-1.
God, I lost another one.
Okay. Can I get a motion that council direct administration to bring the 2023 operating budget as presented in attachment 1 forward for approval at a future council meeting? Councillor Moore will make that motion, and CEO Beveridge is going to be presenting on this along with our senior leadership team. So I'll give her a few moments to get all set up. I think I've invited about 20 people to attend tonight for the budget and No takers. But youth council's here, so thank you. Yeah. Okay. All right.
Through this. It stays up longer than 48 hours, not like somebody else.
PowerPoint, you know, done there, so you may want to plug that back in.
Oh, great. Right.
Jump over.
Thank you, Mr. Lucas.
Thank you very much. Good evening, different angle, it's actually not too bad. So thank you. Tonight I will be presenting budget 2023 for council's consideration. A little bit about process, so you'll note that you did put a motion forward as far as on the table for direct administration to bring the budget as presented forward for future council meeting. One of the aspects of this is that, again, just as we did previously, is that if you allow for me to do the presentation, and then if you have additional motions that you'd like to make, we'll have to deal with this initial motion at the start. And if it's, it would be the recommendation if there were additional motions to defeat this original motion, and then bring forward your additional motions. Is there any questions about process? Okay, well, let's start it. So over the past year, the town of Edson has been recovering, mostly back to pre-pandemic operating levels. Looking to the future, however, the town faces new challenges from post-pandemic impacts such as inflation pressures, higher borrowing rates, supply chain issues, and possible future economic recession. Despite these new challenges, the town remains committed to maintaining service levels, ensuring fiscal sustainability, and achieving its strategic goals as set out by the council. As residents identified during the budget consultation, there was a desire for service level increase for roads while maintaining service levels in most other departments. The $30.5 million draft budget responds to these priorities by increasing the budget for the transportation through increased infrastructure funding and snow removal. The budget also includes funds for casual staff to assist with the outdoor rinks, a sidewalk maintenance program, as well as a proposed backflow prevention program. There's a strong focus on infrastructure, preparing the town for the future. Additional impacts to note are the provincial downloading and additional funding required to support the policing contract increases. So with that, we will move into our first, the presentation overview. We will go through the COVID recovery, the municipal price index, base budget composition, service changes and additional budget requests, council budget requests, as well as taxation increase summary, and finally the taxation impact by assessment value. So to start, council directed in the 2021, actually council deliberations, or 2022 council deliberations, to remove the COVID recovery within 2 years. And in doing so, we brought that forward for 2023 at a 2.46%, which equates to $295,000. These strategies that were implemented by council during the pandemic were to help alleviate the financial burden to our residents. The next item is the Edson's Municipal Price Index, and we've touched on this, we've talked about this at the committee, but just a reminder that essentially Edson has created their own municipal price index, and that allows for a better look at the local impacts versus using the Edmonton MPI. So now we'll get into the base budget. And these slides are, as I mentioned, are all within your package. This information is all within your package, but these are this one has not changed from our original October 15th workshop. So I'll go through COVID subsidizations, and that is the 2.46%, removing that reliance. These obligations are items that we are required to include within the budget. The electricity and gas, and that's at 0.39%. Policing, and as I mentioned, that's an increase for salaries, 1.96%. Compost bin, maintenance manager subscription, salaries, wages, and benefits at 2.69. Other obligations such as insurance and contracts, and as well the proposed revenue sharing agreement offset to operations. So that removes, that allows for 4.17% reduction. And I just wanted to speak to that item as far as we typically would allocate 500,000 towards operations, and in this year we have allocated another 500,000, which equates to $1 million for these operational budgets. Are there any questions? And if I'm going too fast, please don't hesitate to slow me down.
Any questions, council? No.
So these items, this is the service changes and additional budget requests with taxation impact. If council wishes, I can go through each and every one of these if you'd like. Okay.
See if anybody has any questions about these. No, okay.
And these additional requests were brought forward by council request, and they were brought forward in November, early November, for council to understand the scope of and understand the pricing. So these are the requests from the November 8th meeting. If there's any questions on that?
Council, any questions? Councillor Taylor.
Through the mayor to Sale Beverage. We discussed last week about the 2 summer students and the capital cost for purchasing the crack ceiling unit. And that was kind of doubling us up. Will the crack ceiling unit be available by summer, or is that a 2024, 25 delivery date?
Mr. Kidlitz.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. So yeah, just a recap. So I think I presented kind of that both are great. But if council wishes to consider only one, we would take the crack ceiling unit. Great question on the delivery date. I don't have an answer for you. And these days it seems to be a moving target for anything that we try to procure. So our hope would be that it would be here in time, but I don't have that answer right now, but I can endeavor to make sure I have that. If council decides to delay decision until the next meeting.
Yeah, we have or no? Okay, Councillor Barr.
Thanks, through the chair to council and administration. So Councillor Taylor answered one of the questions, so thank you for that. And just to my thoughts on that to administration are then that we should probably keep the summer students in the budget if we don't know when we're going to get the unit that we need for the crack ceiling. So be nice to just have one or the other, but I don't want to miss that opportunity to ensure all the roads get done in town. My next question is regarding the skating loop. I like it's a really cute project, but I am challenged to support it. I know when the staff originally did that during COVID, their other duties were not being required because of COVID. So they had that time to do that. And that was, I think, a really fantastic thing during that time. I know I took my kids out to it one day, and I think it's really wonderful. But I'm challenged that looks like it would cost about $18,000. When I just do that math with how it was presented, the 29,000 minus the 11,000 that you guys had in there. I see it says 26 in there now. I'm not sure why mine's something different. So I had about $18,000 for the skating oval, and it also, I think, a seasonally challengeable thing to do, given where it's located. There's a lot of sun there. And, you know, from what I've been learning since being on council, ice is more complicated than it is to make in your freezer at home. And if you want to be able to skate on it, you have to have the right conditions, and that seems really challenging. So I don't support adding that into the budget at this time on an annual basis.
All right. Mr. Beck, do you want to speak to the skating rule at all, or anything new to add?
Mr. Mayor? No, I have nothing to offer.
All right, thank you. All right, council, any other questions, comments, or concerns? So I will speak to the skating oval, and I would disagree with Councillor Byer on that. We are doing a sizable tax increase this year, and in many areas, there's not a lot of benefit for families, and this is something that we can do that was very positively seen in our community. It connects well with our strategic plan of having an active community. We will still have costs associated with the additional staff that we were going to hire on a casual basis for the rinks, which is going to be apparently that's okay, but a skating oval is not. So my point on this is that there is plenty of places for individuals to skate and play hockey. In a rink format, there isn't anything available in town outside to do it in an oval just to skate with your family and your kids. So I see this as a very minimal expense. I would agree that $18,000 seems like a lot, and I would hope that administration will be able to do it for cheaper. But this is a standard thing that's being provided in communities across the region, across the province, and I just think it's a nice way to enhance that park, which quite frankly right now is a passive park, and this would turn it into an active park in our community. Removing that from the budget is not really going to affect taxation much with all the other increases that we're looking at, but it's going to be a huge value add for families in our area. So I'm in support of it. Councillor Bennett.
Yeah, I'm on the same page through the chair. I'm on the same page with the mayor here. I look at it that it's not going to be any kind of an increase to us. And I also look at it that it depends on when we can put the ice in. I mean, the way it's going right now, we may not even get there for maybe a month. They're going to skate on it or whatever, and that's going to drop the cost by significant right there. Summer students, I definitely agree with the crack feeling like council position. He said, you know, we get the little ones right now, and we don't promote the big ones in that. But I definitely will support keeping the ice oval in there for sure.
All right, thank you. Any other questions, comments, or concerns? Councillor Chenard.
Through to the chair, I scanned through it. We talked about the lights at the park. Did we get any follow-up?
That's capital, and I'll be our next.
Oh,
yeah.
Too soon.
Yeah.
Retract the question. Remind me later.
I'll also speak to the summer students. I think it's a good idea to keep them in the budget for this year. If we get that crack ceiling unit, then before then that can be brought forward or not. There's plenty of work to be done. I'm sure you can utilize those resources. All right, Councillor Moore.
Through the chair, to administration, just wanted to know if we had anything going on at the Griffiths Park ice rink this year, if that was going to be used for a public skating or something like that.
Mr. Mayor, for the council, yes, we re-leveled Griffiths Park this summer to try to make it a little bit easier to flood. That one, the pad was really out of level, so it was difficult to flood. So we did a little bit of leveling in there, and as soon as conditions would allow, we would get in there and we would flood, just like every year. We would try to do it in between clearing snow. Good, thank you.
All right, Councillor Taylor.
Through the mayor to council administration, to the first comment on the summer students, I'm in support of keeping that in the budget. As Mayor Harris said, I'm sure we could we could use the help for now, and we get the equipment in time, then. There's that, but I think if they're in there, we can still use them. To the skating loop, nice things cost money. And this is a nice thing. It's something for families, it's something unique. As Mayor Zahara said, it makes use of a park that has no use. I work across the street from it. It just is a passive park. And I'll tell you from a school perspective, at lunch, many of our students would bring their skate and then go eat their lunch skating that way. And if we can give them something to do at that lunch hour or something to do after school, that's a safe place that we can create, then why not? So I'm in support of keeping that in the budget.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments, or concerns? All right, moving on.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So that concludes the additional requests that were included. And so this provides us with the summary. So the base budget is an increase of 4.52%, along with the service changes and requests of 3.19. At the budget workshop, the initial budget was at 7.71%. Including these requests brought forward was brings us to a total of 8.25% for 2023.
And that concludes. Oh, okay.
And further, just speaking on the impact of the taxation increase on property taxes, we always like to show this information just to show as far as how it would impact the residents and as well as our non-residential. And just a note, we did look into the average value of the single residential property is $313,204, which leads to an increase of $163.06 on their municipal taxes for a year, which equates to $13.59 a month.
All right, any questions, comments on this?
And that concludes my presentation on the 2023 operating budget. Open to any questions for councilman.
All right, so any further questions on the operating budget? This will be, if this motion passes, or we brought forward to a future council meeting where we'll give our final seal of approval or disapproval. With that, I will call the question then. All those in favor? Motion carried. Can I get a motion that council direct administration to bring the 2023 capital budget as presented in attachment 2 forward for approval at a future council meeting? Councillor Chenard will make that motion.
Okay, so now I will introduce the 2023 capital budget. There are a total of 46 projects, as mentioned within your package. 31 new projects for 2023, two projects that may flow through the operating budget, 2 projects with deferred funding for future highway projects, and 11 carryover projects from 2022. The total of these projects comes to $31,240,645, and the proposed funding is $23,767.9 in grants, $747,433.220 in town of Edson reserves, and $39,525 in cost sharing partner. So this item was discussed the last committee meeting. And for each of the areas, we've determined that the GMs will actually speak to each of their items. They also have brought supplemental information on the items that were requested for more information to ensure that there's clarity. One of the things you'll notice in the presentation is that we have included the reserve name beside each of the item, so you're aware of what reserve that it's being funded from, and we've also provided you with reserve sheets for your reference as well. So with that, I will allow for Mr. Beck, our protective services.
Welcome, Mr. Beck. You missed the fun last week. Yeah. And so you're on the hot seat this week.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and CEO Beveridge. Okay, under protective services, there's an emergency backup generator proposed for the fire hall. Really, municipal facilities, it's best practice for your emergency operations center. Let's not call that anymore. Coordination center in your backup, certainly your fire hall. You should probably have a generator, a backup generator for those buildings. And eventually, when we get to the leisure center, you'd probably want a backup generator there as well, because it would be a place where people would probably go in the case of an emergency. So we've got the generator proposed in the budget. There was photocopier. I understand there was discussion about leasing versus buying. I'm not an expert on that. I could go either way. I trust that they researched it, so they've included some funds for a photocopier. The trailer was the sprinkler setup in case of a wildfire that was discussed, and I think Mr. Schramm discussed that with council. The rest are some accessories needed for the peace officers. Under parks, the 350. Yeah, it needs a little bit more explanation. So the Parks and Trails master plan was adopted in 2017, and somewhere in council at that time. And it recommended 3 major phases of trail construction. The first phase was quite large. It said for the first 5 years, let's try to find this. About $2.2 million for the first 5 years. Then it said the next 5 years you'd have to invest about 2.8, and then after 10 years plus the third phase, another 2.7. So a lot of funds. And council of the day started strong in 2018. I think you invested about well over 250,000 in trail construction. And then I believe in the last 2 years, you budgeted about 200,000 for trail construction each year, maintenance or construction. So last year we had 200,000 in there. We didn't do any trail construction. We had some projects picked out, but the urgency became doing something with Lions Bridge. And it's there, it's closed, and we have to remove it. And so we thought we would have time to get the approvals. We need environmental approvals, and also to have the bridge removed and perhaps even have a design and a bridge installed. We don't have those approvals yet. We still have the environmental approvals because we're working in the riparian area of we require them. And I wish we weren't, but we do. So basically, a lot of those funds are carried over into this year. Into this year's budget, so it's more than 150,000 from last year's budget stacked onto 200,000 for this year. The estimates that the town got in 2020 for when Lions Bridge was assessed ranged, the cost could be anywhere from 150,000, I believe, up to about 350,000, depending on what bridge design you want to do. We hope we can do the more economical version, but we simply can't put a sea can across and call it done. Some places might be able to, but we can't. So we'll get an economical design done and have a bridge put on there. That the options were a Bailey Bridge, which is a very simple pedestrian bridge. In fact, we talked to a local contractor that said that they could have one delivered and installed for about 100,000. So, so the ranges are, we want to do it for as economical as possible. There will be some slope work on both sides of that trail. And then we do have a bunch of repairs to do on the trail system this year. And at this time, that's what staff have indicated would be their priority. A bunch of trail repairs, especially in the Hilldale area. And when the trail was built, a lot of the drainage was not entirely figured out. So we've got some drainage issues and a Not a safety issue yet, but a pending safety issue near a bridge. Where there's some sloughing and sloping away from the trail system. So they've identified them as projects and I wish I had them prepared to show you. So they've got a list of priorities that they would like to see on the trails, but they didn't anticipate actually doing new trail construction. So that's that one. I'm happy to take questions whenever.
And we'll just stop there on the trails.
Sure.
That was a topic of discussion. Councilor Byer.
Thanks. Through the chair to administration and council. Firstly, thank you, Mr. Beck, for your explanation on the Lions Park and kind of where that's headed. So I'm not sure if this is kind of up for the discussion or not, but given some consideration over where I maybe. So I guess what I'm trying to get to is I'm wondering if it's necessary to replace that Lions Bridge. I realize it is on our plan. And I'm not sure when it first became about to getting there. I walked near that trail today because I wanted to see it for myself. I know that there is a road right around the campground, so I estimated it being maybe 50 meters at best. That if the bridge is not in use, they can walk south around the road to access the trail a different way, or further north, which is I don't know if I would even call it a full block on the other side of the motel there, to another pedestrian bridge, which seems fine from what I could see with the snow on the ground. And something that we have been asked since I've been on council is, and Councillor Taylor brought this up last week, was the lack of accessible walking on 63rd Street north of 13th Ave. And when I look at the biggest liability within our trail system, I know I'm not sure where that north of 63rd falls in the category, but things have changed since. Things have changed in our trail system since we've started building trails. We've recognized now that the airport loop is extremely popular, very, very popular. And by making that completely accessible, people have access to things in our community in a much different way than they did prior, whether they get on that and then go to sidewalks or other trails. And I think one of the unique aspects is that anyone who lives north of 13th Avenue on 63rd, all they have to do now is get however many blocks to 63rd, and then they're safe. Then they have a proper sidewalk that their kids can ride their bikes and go to school on. But the thing is that the kids are already doing that, and it's a very narrow road. And in my opinion, our liability has changed significantly on that over the past several years since that loop was completed. And when I look at now in hindsight, this Lions Park Bridge, I question if that's the right decision to continue replacing it. It's a very beautiful bridge, like it is really, really nice. But there is a way around it on the north side and the south side within 100 on maybe 100 meters or so on one side and 50 meters on the other. So that is still accessible. If the bridge isn't there, people can still get around. There will be no issues that way. But we do have another issue, and it will take years, I think, to get there, is the residential pedestrian access on 63rd Street north of 13th Avenue. So I would maybe propose that we could maybe redirect the funds. And I know that money wouldn't complete it, but it would maybe just start that process. I think it would take many years to complete that because a lot needs to be done. But if we don't start, we will never get there.
Councillor Taylor.
Through the mayor to administration and council, thank you, Councillor Byer, for understanding my horribly complicated thing I said last week that no one got, but finally I'm glad to hear it's like someone actually heard what I said. So and I agree. What would be a trail, but it would also double as a sidewalk up 63rd Street north of 13th Ave. I've heard from residents, they want to be connected at least from the Skyview area and if possible, north from that. The plan, according to the Trails Master plan, was to do an enormous loop, basically down 748, all the way down and link to the other side. That is a costly loop, but looking at it in stages and looking at it more as, I think, making it accessible for our residents, right? So they can walk down, and the idea, the 63rd Street as it is, if you're walking on that road or riding your bike on that road, it is extraordinarily narrow. And if someone suddenly parked there and parks are going around, it gets a very dodgy little area. And I agree with Councillor Byer, we need to start on that area. As for the Lions Bridge, I agree, if there's other ways to make that place accessible, then our focus could be on new settings to make them safe and accessible. So I don't know how far we can get with a new trail with the funding that we have, even up from, would be 4 blocks. I don't know how far, like, I'm sure, but we have to think about a start.
Thank you, and I think land acquisition is gonna be, that's part of the issue in that area. We don't have the lands required. Go ahead, Councillor Position.
Yeah, through the chair to council, the Lions Park Bridge has been there for 50+ years. So 50 years has been a bridge there. It's the end of our trails. If you come to the end of that trail, you're going to go to Tim Hortons, you take that bridge. I understand you can walk through the field, the slope field over to the road, or you can walk out to the road and go around if you really want to put the effort, or you can turn around and go back. I don't think I would personally, I don't think I would ignore the fact that people from 41st can use that from that cul-de-sac over to the other side of the creek, and it's been there for literally 50+ years. So I think an economical, we don't need a bridge. It looks like Centennial Park, but I think we should replace an existing infrastructure, because I don't think we have the budget to put the 63rd Street Park Trail in. So I think that the bridge should stay in the budget and the plan. We've already had people who invested time in it looking for the economical solution. And I think this I don't think that there's enough there to cut to gain the trails on 63rd. I don't think we shouldn't do the 63rd trail. I just know it took a long time to get that extension on 63rd alone. And you start to run into where you're pushing onto the road allowance to try and create your trail system that's a lot more complex than just that. So, and I've heard from people who live in the Hillendale area that want to walk to school or to work in the morning, that it would be really nice to even just have a set of lights through the narrowest part, from 42nd over to 17th, just so they can feel a little bit safer darting through. Because I know, like, I have staff and they know there's a lot of youth that will walk to school, they'll dart through there, but she said they go around to the 40th and then down 6th, and they'd like to just, if it was illuminated, they could walk through. Simple things like that can improve our systems, because Hillendale's quite isolated. If this time of year, if you're walking to school, you got to go through the dark forests. So some people would like a connection to those neighborhoods. But
You, Councillor Bevan.
Yeah, through the chair. I agree with Councillor Position here on the bridge. Has been there for a long time. I've been around for a long time, and it's well used. I think it can be replaced here and it'll be well used. 63rd Street, if I remember previous council, it was previous council before that. There was brought up about 63rd Street. And a lot of the residents up there said that they would oppose to it. They didn't want to give up any of their frontage if they had to. We have residents up there that are just about on, except for the ditch that goes through there. They don't have a lot of frontage in that anyway, and they were definitely opposed of it. I have friends that live up there. I go and visit people up there lots. There's not a whole lot of people up there walking all the time, and that there's more people that use the 63rd that we put in to go around in the time on the 13th Avenue. There's more people using that than there was going up 63rd. So I think that 63rd is a long way down the road. I don't think it's a wise investment of our money. I think we've got other places we can do to keep our trails up. We've got a lot of nice trails in town that are going to need fixing in the future here. And I think if we don't keep up on that, we're going to be behind the 8 ball on that. So that's my input.
All right, council, any other comments or questions? I haven't spoken yet. I'm very unfamiliar with how well used the Lions Park Bridge is. I'm not from that area, I've never lived in the east part of town. So I've never really experienced that part of the trail system. I have heard people that have said that they've missed the bridge. But at what cost? And so I'm a little hesitant just to pull it out of the budget at this point. I do agree 63rd Street North needs to be completed. There's a ton of people that walk on that street. I live in that area. Every single day I drive that area. There are people on the road, kids riding their bikes, people stopping to get their mail, and I am surprised nobody's been killed up there yet. With the amount of traffic that people are trying to connect to 748 through town. So I do think it needs to be a priority, but I don't think it's something that's gonna even get close to being done this year. Land acquisition is gonna be an issue. There are some people that certainly don't want to see that in the area, but I would disagree with the comments made here. I think there's far more people that would like to see a trail up in that area. So I don't think yanking the budget's going to solve that problem at this point, but I think what we should be doing is having a greater in-depth review of our trails master plan to get an update. I don't think this council has really delved into that. And then to try to set some priorities out of that for future budgets, but well, that's just my take. Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, through the mayor to Councillor Bevan's points, and I think the mayor said it, is that lots of people use that road to walk up there. And in fact, I think we'd see more. A lot of people still don't use it because it is unsafe to walk. It is really, you're on a very narrow road with high vehicle traffic. It's a dodgy little area, and I've walked it myself, with kids in tow, and it's a tough walk. Having a trail / sidewalk, make it a whole lot safer, and I agree with Mayor Zahara. I'm surprised that no one's been hurt.
Councillor Positioning.
Yeah, through the mayor council, I'm by no means saying 63rd isn't a priority. I believe it is used a lot. I did spend 50% of my entire life in that neighborhood on 41st. And that is just, it's a natural flow from that neighborhood. When I was a kid, he went across that bridge. I couldn't tell you how many times. It's also, there is a bridge to the north, but it is in the forest, and it's down the ravine and up the ravine through the forest. And so sometimes if you don't want to go there, and a prime example is 63rd, is the outside trail beside the road is probably busier than the trail in the forest because people don't want to venture in the forest all the time. So having that bridge is just a natural, nice, wide, visible, safe route across. So I fully support extending 63rd because it is important. But I also don't want to see the Lions Bridge squashed because I think that it's just I don't know. Maybe I'm nostalgic on that one, but I still think it's the end of our trail system. It loops it up and it completes the trail down there.
So, any other comments, questions, good discussion? Administration, any thoughts on the Lions Bridge?
Well, thank you.
I think one thing we can take away from this, connectivity and trails and sidewalks really important, especially when it comes to safety. So I would endeavor administration if we can maybe do a bit of a review on that at some point here this spring. And maybe start having some discussions with some of the people up in 63rd to see if we can't get some cooperation and start moving forward. I know that the one original piece that was missing on 63rd south of 13th, that was a stalemate for quite some time, and then we had some movement, and now that section is completed. And Councillor Posichny was maritime. We did the 63rd Street Trail. I remember the discussion at the time. People were like, why are we putting a trail there? Nobody's going to use it. And man, that thing is busy. And I think that just speaks to how important these investments are in our community. Councillor Taylor?
Yeah, through the mayor, if I'm hearing what council's saying, I mean, if certainly we can't work on it for this budget, we need to start planning I think sooner rather than later. Because I think the cost of the entire loop was about in the plan that was written in 2017. was 2.2 million. If I remember it correctly. I don't know what that cost is now. I dread to think, but I think we need to start making plans, especially when it comes to safety. And so if we're having that review, that would be fantastic, a fantastic step in the right direction.
Yeah, you're the chair of future administration. One thing, since we're talking trails and we are in capital is, I know that the original inception of a lot of the trails, there was two different models of expenditure on it. We went with one that required high maintenance and lower construction costs. And by using the trails, there is some, I would call them almost scary sized cracks that need to be addressed. So in our planning and processes, we need to make sure that we're ensuring we're maintaining and repairing. Because I know people whose kids' tires have got jammed into the cracks because they're that wide. So that kind of, we can't ignore the maintenance on the existing trails, but we're always focusing on the new ones. So we got to keep what we have in good shape too. So it's back to my roads ceiling crack feeling. So like I do to Mr. Kitlitz, I have to say to you too, is we need to make sure that we keep the water out of that foundation and make sure we're tarring it.
You might have 2 summer students you can.
Yeah, and a brand new machine to put tar down.
Mr. Mayor, council is speaking our language. I mean, and that's why when we bring forward new capital projects for you, we also have to include discussion about that there's operational costs that go with everything new we bring on. And so every more mile of trail we build, it's fantastic. It increases connectivity, but there's an impact and you have to maintain the assets. So that's all. And some of the trail has not been maintained, so a bunch of it would just be repairing those things this year. So.
All right, moving on.
Okay, the outdoor lighting. Unfortunately, I wasn't here for that. You know what, and I'll apologize to council. We actually didn't understand the scope of the project either. But the staff that investigated at the start, I think assumed almost exactly what I heard when I watched the tape was, we think council wants just minimal, maybe some solar lights. And the more they investigated, the more they got recommendations to go beyond that from experts. Let's just put it that way. And so the project grew. So, and some of even the solar suppliers just wanted to warn them that they may not be 100% happy with the outcome, but that's okay. You know, they were willing to supply it, and we had one local who was willing to do the work and provide the. So we did actually source the solar option because we still need to do concrete pedestals and everything else. They gave us a quote between $8,000 and $10,000 a light. It's the heavy batteries, it's the heavy lights. So if council want to start with much less of a program than full auditorium lighting, we absolutely could. And you can always go back if it's deemed not to be enough, you can always go back and supplement it. So we're happy to try something less. And next time we'll make sure we understand what council's expectations are. I think that's a lesson for us. So if council wanted to change that number, we're quite happy with that, and we would do that between now and when the item is brought ahead.
Yeah, so my thought of this was my item is cheaper is better. I might prefer solar, and I would assume that if they don't work at that location, if they are solar, we'd be able to remove them and put them in a different location. I think anything in those areas would be better than what's now, especially at the basketball courts. I don't know how many lights we're looking at. I would say probably 2 or 3 at the basketball courts and maybe 2 or 3 at the dog park. And I would say that we can use the rest of the budget to light up the trail system, and that was brought up here. I much prefer doing that and hitting more areas than, you know, spending close to $250,000 here on something that I don't think is necessary. So that's just my thought. Councillor Byron.
Thanks, through the chair to council and administration. Thank you for bringing that back. I also agree with the mayor on this one. I think that if we can hit more areas, that's great. And, you know, maybe this can be a learning opportunity as well, how it works in our community. And Councillor Position did also recommend a a trail that, you know, is highly used, and maybe administration has heard other information as well, about, you know, where that could be best utilized in our community.
Right. Councilor Bevan?
On the old dog park out there with that solar lighting. How much area does that light up? Would that be enough to do just our dog park in here, or would it be do enough to put the lights at the basketball court? Is it lights up a great big area there? And what was it cost and how would it be?
Mr. Mayor, through the council, yeah, I tried to get that figure of what it cost, because I think that was done in 2014, my research said.
Yeah.
And there was actually, the town was lucky and got some grant funding for that from a local company, so they assisted, but I didn't get a final number. I couldn't find that. It's pretty effective. I would agree with you. So that's why when we went back and looked at it, and if you wanted to start with just a couple at the dog park, and as the mayor suggested, maybe 2 or 3 by the basketball courts, maybe that is all, that is enough. I think staff were just concerned that if it's not enough on day one, council's gonna be upset the other way, and you know, you didn't provide enough lighting, because the experts suggested there's a formula for calculating how much lighting is required for each activity, and they tell you how many lumens you should provide, and so that's where it kind of grew. That's where the project grew. But I would agree with you, the lighting at the old dog park, the current one is pretty good.
Yeah, I think it's great. I mean, that we'd probably do our dog park here, just one in the middle. And you can put a fire hydrant up there for the other dogs that, you know, so, but you know, 2 at the other place would be probably just great too, and we can add more if we need it.
Councilor Tim?
Through the mayor to the council, and then I see a lot of students play basketball down there, and I teach a few of them, and I did mention to them, I said, well, you know, it's something the council's looking at, putting lighting down there, and these guys looked at me and went, oh, that was their response. But if you knew these guys, that is their way of saying that's a nice idea, because it saves on their. It is a nice idea, and they do use it a lot. And again, I go back to the same thing I said about the skateboard. We're providing a safe location for youth to do some extracurricular. And I don't think we need to blow the budget on it. I think just the solar lighting save on their gas and their batteries.
CEO Beveridge?
Mr. Mayor, I'm just curious, just with the discussion this evening, and looking at this item, it's fairly specific when it comes to Griffith Park outdoor lighting, but noting the other item is parks and trails. Just wondering if there's an appetite at all for council to consider park and trail lighting as far as this item to be something to explore, just adding another project for parks. But just a thought, I just hear the conversation going around the room, just wanted to explore other options.
So through to CEO Beveridge, I believe this is coming out of our energy reserve, right? So this is money set aside for these types of projects. I have no issue personally, and I'm happy to hear from council, is to look at outdoor lighting projects throughout our trail system. If we are going to do the skating oval, maybe one at the skating oval, because I know it gets dark late at night. Or other areas that parks would see beneficial as a chain. Provided an area, I don't know, that's treed probably, so it might be a little bit more difficult, but I don't know, council, how do you feel about that? Councilor Shillard?
I like the idea of keeping it in, but where we mentioned to the dog park and you can't find information, could you not take the supplier, show them, say, I want that? Like, you know, just a simple way of doing it, because I agree what Councilor Bevan's saying, that light is quite bright. I was, you know, surprised. So, but what we're saying in the room, if we keep the 180 and you said there were $10,000 light. Approximately.
Mr. Mayor, that was the quote we got from a local.
So we could be looking at now anywhere from 15 to 16 lights at 180,000, and that may solve a lot of the problems. Like if we keep the 180, and if they were 10, and if they're more, we can get 15 lights. We put some in the trail, so leave it in 180 and see if we can get 14 or 15 lights for that price, and spread them around.
Councilor Pacicki?
Yeah, through the merit to administration. Can we not just reword it? You removed the Griffith Park, is that what you're asking?
Mr. Director to Councilor Precision, my suggestion was park and trail lighting
essentially to allow for food flexibility, but as I said, I'm not adding another project to parks. For 2023 arbitrarily, so.
Congratulations, Bob. Okay, I think we got consensus there.
Just take out the word Griffiths.
Sure. Mr. Mayor, the next item, you can see I'm moving down, downtown trees. I'll say, the number is really just a placeholder. We're still waiting for a report on, we asked Alaska Gibb architect to give us some advice why the trees keep dying in the downtown. It's a lack of maintenance. Is it the road salt? What is it? Because unfortunately, I believe the town hasn't had a good track record of survivability.
Three or four cycles we tried to replace those trees.
Yeah, so this time we're doing a bit of a deeper dive and to tell us, and it probably has to do with the construction of the wells that were placed in and, lack of drainage. So we've just considered that number a placeholder for a solution. At this time, we don't have the solution to tell you. If we can make trees work again, we will do that. But if we don't know that they will work, we don't want to waste taxpayer money planting more trees to see them live 2 years. It's just irresponsible. Either you do it right or you don't do it. So I consider that number a placeholder. The next 3 items are really just asset replacement. The Kubota deck mower, the MT trackless. They both are 8 years, and they're at the end of their cycle and need to be replaced. And the cemetery mower actually doesn't run. So that was at the end of its cycle as well. So that was not running. I think the blue ones are really a carryover from previous years, so not much point in talking about those ones.
Mr. Beck, what is the campground improvements?
Campground improvement is also that's kind of a carryover from I believe when there were some rather ambitious plans to do some real significant improvements. And even campground study to show a bunch of servicing in the campgrounds. We removed that from, I think that was removed from last year's budget. So that is also a bit of investment money on projects still to be determined, but it's tables, outhouses, things like that. Every year your campgrounds are going to require that. And so I believe our parks people are going to debrief with both operators in the coming weeks to say what needs to be worked on. In fact, one of the proposals from Rotary when they took over Wilmore for us operating it was they wanted changes to some buildings, and it all made sense. So part of that is to accommodate for some of that capital. One of the ideas that we did talk about with them also was if there's any way we could at least provide at Wilmore some sort of at least a Wi-Fi hotspot. So people could go, we know that there's a cell issue there. There's no coverage, but at least if people could come up and get use the hotspot, we probably couldn't provide it throughout the park. But if people would feel safer having some service there, then maybe we would look at that as well. So there's a bunch of different little ideas, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. Under facilities, Kinsman building, that's just a gable roof building. It needs shingles, and it was vandalized last year. Someone removed a bunch of the shingles. So the keyless entry system is a fob system, and we hope to implement one that could be used in other buildings. It could be expanded on. So, but this is just first building. The public works paging system, I think, is the highest priority for the public works folks over there. It has to do with just paging the staff and a matter of safety in the yard, basically. We don't have a good intercom system or otherwise paging system in that building, is my understanding. And I know there were concerns about the food bank building roof replacement. That was the initial estimate provided by our roofing contractor. I think CO Beverage told you we're looking at getting a second assessment just to be sure. But it's a flat roof, and unfortunately, every time it goes to a flat roof,
it's, they're expensive. It's a built-up asphalt roof.
Councillor Byron.
Thanks, through the chair to administration. So I was kind of wondering, so if I'll start by saying if the roof needs to be replaced, it needs to be replaced. Just trying to look at a little bit outside the box. And, you know, I know we talk a lot about our assets and we have a lot and they are a lot to maintain. And just kind of paying attention to like the Edmonton Food Bank say, okay, so it's my understanding that they own their own buildings that the municipality doesn't. And I was like, oh, I wonder why we own, why does the town own the food bank in Edson? I don't know what it's like anywhere else. So, you know, we are where we are. But if they own their own building and say we gave them like funding to help them do this, like, would we not get a tax write-off or something? Would they not be eligible for more grants if they own the building, but we could still help them financially with something like the roof? Just trying to look at it a different way, right? If they might be eligible for grants, why are we funding it this way, when, you know, we can still supplement them? Like, not against the food bank, completely supportive, I volunteered. I just trying to think of a different way, like how do we maintain these assets that kind of keep coming forward, that are integral to our community? I don't know, just thinking, like, is there a different way to do it than the way that we do? Would they be eligible for additional grants? I don't know. I know that there are different grants for nonprofits than are for us, for municipality. Just wondering if there's kind of any thought behind that. It's $250,000. You know, if there was a way to get that with a tax receipt back. I don't know how that works for a municipality, but personally it works great on a personal level. Just kind of some really broad questions about that.
CO Beveridge or?
Yeah, we've been talking about this a lot. Mr. Mayor and Council is, you're right. There's probably better ways to do things, but we have a bunch of agreements with groups. They exist. It seems there's not a whole lot of conformity between the agreements between the groups, and that's okay. There's reasons. And some of our agreements are quite old, and they probably should be standardized or modernized. And we've got a list of them, and some of them we maintain absolutely everything, and then the next one we don't. So we've got CO Beverages has also tasked us with a corporate project list, and on our corporate project list is a review of all these user group leases and building agreements. And absolutely, to have a group that could help us with some of these buildings in a different manner. I'll give you an example. The next item is the library, where the library is applying for grants, CFIP grants, to help maintain that building. It'd be great to have a relationship with the other groups like that, or to examine something else. Absolutely. We're not eligible for certain grants, but the groups are. So it'd be great to if someone could help us with those.
All right, no other questions, comments? I do know the food bank did put a large amount of capital into that building last year. Unfortunately, the roof leaking has caused some damage to the upgrades they did in our building. But I do think we have a good relationship there. I'm certainly open to looking at better ways if there's ways I can benefit both organizations moving forward.
I think, as Mr. Becker mentioned, it's important to note that when we are negotiating these agreements, we're having those conversations as well. That's the intention as well, is to understand, is this the best way for both parties? So the opportunity sometimes when these leases are as old as what some of them are, it's a great way to introduce ourselves and have a conversation, and that's something that we think is really important moving forward. It's one of the things where you see all of the facilities. We have a considerable amount of facilities that we take care of, and the preventative maintenance and all the maintenance that we try to do preventative maintenance, I'll say, and the maintenance that is done, it's a lot on the forces that we have. So we are always talking about opportunities for other options.
What on?
Mr. Mayor, the next item is library renovations, and that's really the commitment that council have made towards the library project. And under recreation, we've got two items that are really related to the cleaning of the pool, and both of them need to be replaced. And then, of course, we have YCE Center for the first year as a holding mark of $20 million.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Beck.
I talked about some of these at committee, Mr. Mayor, but I'll rip through them quickly. A couple of replacement vehicles. V108 is the chipper truck for parks, and 131 is our meter reading unit. We under the roads and transportation, we have a couple of sanitary sewer upgrades in the, we'll call it west central, northwest central sort of area town. Here's the note on the second one, 54th Street Central. It says 1 to 6th Ave. Really, that should just be at 6th Ave. The issue that we're having there is sort of right at 6th Ave around that intersection and even underneath portion of basketball courts and parking lot there. Road repairs, I sure would have liked to have a list prepared to share with council for this today. I don't, but I'm going to endeavor to get, we're going to work on getting a list here, even if it comes after council. Hopefully we'll consider this and we can come back and say, here's the list of items we're going to do with this well before next year. So we're working on it. We just don't have it prepared yet. And Mr. Mayor, you talked about 8th Ave as a potential, so we'll look at that one, but we want to get a list. This is just general repairs of problem areas throughout town on the surface. Crack cleaning, we talked about that already. I hope to have a picture and some details on that. I tried frantically to find it before council here tonight and I didn't find it, so but we could talk about that one a little bit. Lost Creek is as a carryover as well as First Ave, where we have preliminary designs on that work and we're looking at splitting it into 2 projects. Because of Lost Creek, we can actually find out maybe we can do half, the west half earlier in advance of Lost Creek being done. So we're going to do the continued design work on that. And then the other 2 are obligations based on some approvals that AT has us on the hook for. Energy projects, the power lines buried on 46th Street between 6th Ave and 9th Ave on the east side. And then at the airport, we have a couple of equipment replacement of a broom for the Komatsu loader. And then the terminal repairs are going to be a carryover. We are actually putting that up for bids here shortly. So we should have some stuff shortly on that one. Under the utility section, some big ones here. Obviously, water well 25 being a redrill and commissioning. That's a big one. Very important water well for us that we need to get back online to high producers. So that's a big item, quite expensive, but important. So that'll be on the books. Hydraulic water valve maintenance unit. This is another kind of all-in-one unit that staff can use to help with our maintenance of our valves. We don't have a very good at all maintenance program for our water valves. Typically, most municipalities will exercise their water valves every 1 or 2 years. We aren't doing that diligently. This particular unit is very handy because it actually helps the operators exercise these valves in a way that reduces the risk of breaking them. When they aren't exercised very often, the risk of breaking them is higher, and now we've got repair work. So it's a pretty advanced unit that's going to help with that maintenance program. Council's aware of some more regulatory issues with water. Fluoride plan for 2023 is actually doing the plan and the regulatory work, and then there's some pretty major upgrades coming in future years that we'll see in the 5-year when that comes back to council to upgrade the water system for that. Water leak detection units and locating units. We do have these. These are replacements. The ones we have are wearing out and quite old. This is the equipment that the operators will use to detect water leaks. There's 2 different types of units that allow them to get to pinpoint where a water leak is in the middle of winter when it's cold outside and they don't want to excavate in the wrong spot. So the ones we have are just getting old and they need to be replaced. Degas again is another regulatory design work this year with some major upgrades in the future. And then groundwater monitoring wells is another regulatory item that we have to install. 3 of these in 2023. Stormwater asset condition study. Council recalls we did the sanitary asset condition assessment study this year. This is the same thing. We're going to get the same type of work done on our stormwater, so that we have accurate data to inform future maintenance and replacement plans. The other 3 are carryovers. I can give a bit of an update on the reservoir retrofit, water reservoir. We did get the tenders back for that, and surprise, surprise, way over budget. So we haven't decided yet how we're gonna do with that, but that's the news on that one. That's it, unless the council has any questions.
Councilor Byron.
Thanks. Up to the chair to administration. I think last week under roads and transportation, someone, maybe it was the mayor that asked about the AW crosswalk, and it was mentioned it's still on the books. Will that be included in the, like, can that be added on? Like, I'm not sure why it's not on this report.
Yeah, no, 3 years, very good question. It should, I think maybe at the time we weren't sure. It's likely that that's not gonna get done this year. Well, it's not gonna get done this year. Anyway, we'll have to put it on as a for sure. So thanks for noting that. We'll get that one on there.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments, or concerns on the capital budget? Councilor Byron.
Thanks. After the chair to administration, I noticed we did get the copies of the operating reserve budgets along with the capital reserve, sorry, not budget, the balances, sorry. Are we gonna be going over that, or is this a good time to ask questions on that? Just not. Related to the
beverage.
It's right through the council. That is just for supplementary, just in order to, because we were providing the budget with the reserves, towards it. So that was what was provided for.
CEO Beverage, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think normally we review the reserve balances at year end when we get our financials. That normally.
Yes, that is correct.
So, I don't know if that's something I can wait till then, but go ahead, CEO. Councilor Byron.
Thanks. Through the chair to administration. So the reason I'm asking is, I know there were some changes on the infrastructure from this week to last week. And then there's some questions, not everything that is on that, the spending for revenue sharing. I couldn't find it all in the budget unless I just missed it, and that's why.
CEO Beverage.
Mr. Mayor, I'd have to go back and look. We were trying to make sure we could bring this forward actually for council today to review.
Go ahead.
Councilor Mayor.
Okay, thanks to the chair to administration. On the capital reserve budget, the second page, there's an infrastructure breakdown. There's, I believe, that 40,000 is removed for the wastewater loading stations retrofit design, refit design. And then just some questions on the revenue sharing on the right hand side column. Just a clarification on what the building life cycle report and the parks asset life cycle report and the connected community strategies.
Go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, I'm just trying to find those items. Without finding them, I know what the items are. One is the initiative. We need to do a life cycle assessment of all the facilities. It's related to your comment earlier about it's kind of hard for us to plan facilities and tell council how much it's actually truly going to cost to maintain, or are we better off abandoning certain facilities until you know the true condition. And so that's to bring in someone to do a condition assessment and a life cycle plan for all the assets beyond fixed assets of buildings. Second one.
Parks asset report.
It's a similar thing, just the park spaces.
Okay.
Exactly. It's been noted that it hasn't been done here in years, just all of our green spaces. Let's get a full assessment done and let's see where we're at. Sometimes that's bad news because you get bad news, but it's an exercise in due diligence. We're required to do it, and we probably should do it for insurance purposes, both for our facilities and our outside assets. And the connected community strategies. This is a bit of an all-encompassing account that to address a number of things under the truth and reconciliation pillar in the strategic plan, and also the diversity. I think there was a diversity goal, and so we're working on a bunch of initiatives that we probably have to bring back to council. So it's a bit of a
placeholder.
It's an account, but we don't have specific initiatives today. But that's to advance those items from the strategic plan.
Thank you.
All right, anybody else? All right. So unless anybody has some major issues with the capital plan, which would require us to defeat the motion, I will call the question. All those in favor? Motion carried.
Why do we 6.1?
Thank you to SLT and particular Steel Beverage and Daniel for jumping up and play here today unexpectedly.
I'd like to say thank you for their support today.
Yes, and we hope Spittner will be back in action soon. We have our RCMP Q2 report. Can I get a motion that council accept the November 15th, 2022 information items as set out in attachments 1 to 3 for information? Councillor Byer will make that motion. I don't think there's anything to speak to here. The information is pretty straightforward. Remind council that there is an open house with the RCMP detachment commander
Tomorrow night.
tomorrow night.
It is.
7 o'clock.
Wow, this week's going by quick. 7 p.m. at Friendship Center. If anyone wants to attend. But with that, I will call the question. All those in favor? Motion carried. We have no sundry items. Council committee reports going back to November the 2nd, and we will start today with Councillor Byer.
Thanks. On November 3rd, I attended the reception for Westdale Head Community Futures for Kaylee's Unmade award reception. On November 8th, the committee of the whole meeting, and on November 9th, the Westdale Head Community Futures Subcommittee, Councillor Moore and Councillor Bevan and I met to go over a mandatory board knowledge questionnaire.
All right, thank you. Councillor Bevan.
On the 8th, I attended the committee of the whole meeting. On the 10th, I had a Edson Seniors Transportation Society meeting. And what we got out of there is April 1st, you booked for a trivia night. So all you guys that want to get your teams in, start organizing. We decided this year not to put a float into the Christmas parade. It's as a new board, we just don't have all the help we need in that, and we're stretched to the limit here of getting all our bylaws and everything else going here in that day. We increased our bus charter fee, was passed. We're going to charge a flat rate of $110 per hour with a 3-hour minimum. We are not at the top. We're probably about in the middle of it in that. We were actually using money before when we had the charters going out. It was actually costing us. The new rate meets ATS objective to increase revenue moving the board forwards. Brings in line with comparable charter companies, which we are still below. Supports ETS position of the town of Edson, and we're actively working to create sustainability. We are not going to increase any bus pass memberships to our residents at the lodge in that. But I believe that every foundation, we will probably have an increase to some of our residents there. We've approved the marketing and advertising brochure to advertise on our buses and that. We've gone out and like I say, thanks to Bannister GM for detailing our buses and putting your logo on our bus here. It is now on it. It looks really sharp. People really notice it. So, thank you very much for that. The bylaws have been rewritten. We'll come back to December meeting for a possible adoption here. The 16,000 fuel insurance operating grant continues to be closely monitored. What was really outstanding to us in insurance costs for 2023 have increased by 53% from 2022. That's thrown a little bit of a wrench into our budget here, and that it's gone up substantially, and I know it's gone up other places too. Completed audit financials continue presented to the board monthly. Our follow-up action list has been created and updated monthly. We're being very aggressive on this with objectives to be progressive, significant. And 2022 ridership stats have all been completed up to date, and they're holding the same through every month we have in that. The mileage is staying pretty close to what it is in that. So we're working closely, and I guess the biggest hit was our 53% increase in that. That really hits us. We're going to have to pay out of our own pockets for the rest of the engineers, that's gonna be probably about $25,000 to $3,000 here and that, so. But they've been in touch with Annie in the back here, talking to her all the time on that too, so. And that is my report.
Counselor Taylor.
On November 8th, I attended the community hall meeting, and that is my report.
Counselor Pisichny.
On the 8th, I attended the community of the whole. And on the 14th, I attended the 5.5 hours subdivision at the board meeting.
And do you have a full report on that?
There can't do a report on that because the decisions have to be mailed out.
Counselor Sherrod.
On November 8th, committee of the whole, November 9th, with chamber meeting. The important dates, Santa Claus parade on December 2nd, and the Christmas party. We are still looking for more people. We're at about 130 tickets sold, so we're encouraging people to get out there. And I did attend 3 functions for town. I will not report on. That's it for my report.
Counselor Moore.
Thank you. Yes, November 8th, I attended and chaired the council committee meeting as deputy mayor. And as Councilor Byron elaborated, Councilor Bevan herself and myself went over the or West Jala Community Futures survey, I guess you could say. And yeah, and that's all my report.
All right, for myself, Northern Alberta Mayors met with the Alberta Forest Products Association on November 2nd and 10th to talk about rail transportation. RFD is going to be coming forward to council here in the next few weeks, detailing the situation regarding rail transportation as it impacts our local mill and possibly supporting some advocacy efforts. So be looking forward to that here in the next few weeks. And the Cal meeting on November the 8th. And that is my report. We have no financial items because we spent most of our meeting talking about them. Questions from media and public regarding items from this council meeting. So for the youth counselors who are still awake.
Oh, they're still here? What?
This is your chance. If you have any questions about anything that was discussed. Anybody have any questions? Nobody.
How about the other guy?
I had one, but it got answered earlier.
Okay, perfect, awesome. Daniel, do we have anybody online with questions?
Mr. Mayor, we have one member of the media and one member of the public who are in attendance at the moment. And as during the public hearing, they may use the chat feature or the raise hand feature. Note if they have questions.
All right, so if you have any questions, those that are registered online through our application, please put them in the chat box or use your raise hand feature. I'll give you a couple of moments to do that.
I look as bald in this new seat.
Somebody does. I'm gonna get advertising. Who's that?
I see that Mr. Wells has a question, and there we go.
All right, Mr. Wells, go ahead, ask your question.
Good evening, council, to you and through you to the or Mr. Mayor, to you and through you to the council and the administration. I just had some questions about the draft fees and charges bylaw. Will that be available on the website fairly shortly?
Yes, it will be posted online. It actually should be a part of our agenda package as well currently.
Okay. It was my understanding somebody from the utilities department had talked about there might be some one-time forgiveness of overcharges or something on water usage. Is that still part of the bylaw or has that been taken out?
I'm not sure what you're actually referring to, Mr. Wells, but I can have somebody from administration to follow up with you tomorrow, if that would work.
Okay, yeah, no, that would be fine, yeah.
Okay, do we have his contact information, Daniel?
This, I'm unfortunately not as familiar with the back end of this as I will be at some point. What I may do, Mr. Wells, is send my contact information in the chat, and then you should be able to reach out to me if that works.
Look at him.
Yeah, no, that'd be fine, Daniel. I'd really appreciate that if you could send that off to me. I'll get in contact with you shortly and we can I can just explain to you what was told to me by one of your utility disability workers some time ago. And I thought it was going to be part of this bylaw, but maybe it's not, maybe it's still in the works and can discuss that, I guess, at some later date.
Okay, I think Daniel put his email address in there, Mr. Wells, so you can either email him or give the office a call tomorrow and hopefully we get that sorted
Okay,
out.
thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Okay,
you.
awesome. Thank you so much.
No problem. With that, we have no other questions, so I will take a motion for adjournment from Councillor Chouinard. All those in favor? Motion carried. Youth Council voted in favor too.